Hi friends, welcome back to Sarah Vlogs Thoughts, and today I wanted to talk a bit about how my reading habits have changed during this global pandemic. Before I kind of get into what my reading habits have looked like this year, it's probably good to explain what my reading habits have looked like in the past, just so you get to understand me a little bit better as a reader. I have been keeping a log of my reading since 2010 when I was a middle schooler, and I used to read about 30 books in the summer and 30 books in the school year, so it's about 60 books a calendar year. And while I lost that kind of momentum during high school because I was super duper over involved and a ton of homework and also had a lot of access to technology, I picked my reading pace back up in college with the discovery of audiobooks and was reading about 50 books a year. That was what I set my Goodreads goal to, which allots me about one book a week. And I used to kind of be slower in the school year and then really fast during the summer. So anything I didn't keep up with in the school year, I'd make up for with in the summer. And this year I expected to be the same. I set my 50 books Goodreads goal and I said, cool, we'll see you at the end of the year. We're gonna knock it out of the park this year. Well, little did I know that as of recording this, I would be at 78 books. I finished my reading challenge on June 9th, at which point I did some math and realized I was reading one book about every 1.6 days, which is a lot of reading, whether or not it's a physical book or an audiobook. That's a lot of reading. At my height, which was around May, I read about 21 books. That was the month that I finished my college career and also had nothing to do and no prospects at all. So I spent a lot of time listening to audiobooks, reading print or ebooks, and also doing jigsaw puzzles. And these things correlate because jigsaw puzzles are great. 10 out of 10, 11 out of 10 jigsaw puzzles. If I didn't have a booktube channel, I would have a jigsaw puzzle channel. I would be like Karen Puzzles, my puzzle hero. And I love jigsaw puzzles because there are a set number of pieces. They have, corners. They create a picture and every piece has its place, and once you're done, you know that you're done, and that's the thing. And it's something to have control and ownership over, and those are a couple of things I have been lacking in the year 2020. Maybe you can relate. But as a college senior who had to essentially move her whole life back home in the middle of March, which is not when I expected to move back home or move somewhere else, that was pretty jarring for me physically in my physical position, but also mentally. And so I really turned to stories and turned to jigsaw puzzles for a story that wasn't mine, to kind of hide my own emotions and live in the emotions of somebody else, but also to have some sense of ownership and control over something. Like I can pick out what book I want to read, and also the book has a beginning and end, and you go through the book in a linear fashion. And so I really hooked on to those things, especially as I lost the ability to go out and do other things that I really love to do, including going to the movies and going to see theater. Theater you can't really get anywhere outside of the theater in the format, right? You can watch a bootleg or watch a pro shot, but like theater as theater doesn't exist right now. Similar thing with movies. You can watch movies at home, but it's really a different experience than like being in a theater and being made to turn your phone off and being in a very dark room with a very large screen and like rumbly seat sound, so those things are different, between being there and being home. And I centered a lot of my identity around those activities. And so I really took a turn, dived into reading as much as I possibly could, because it was something that I could do, and it was something that I could control and have ownership over. And I think at the height of that time in May, while I was reading more than I had ever been reading and was really proud of how much I was reading, I also think that's probably wasn't the most healthy time for me. I think back to that time and I was in a terrible place. So, that's pretty evident to me that this wasn't the most healthy reading schedule. I'm not saying I couldn't read 21 books in a healthy way, but the way that I was doing it and the reason why I was reading so much was probably not super healthy for me. As time has gone on, interestingly enough, my reading habits have really slowed. I'm filming this in late August, and to date I've only read 2 books this month, which is really slow compared to my pre-pandemic time too. So there's an interesting thing here, because I don't think that has been healthy for me either, because I need that outlet of somebody else's story, so I'm not stressing about work or stressing about, you know, emotions or friendships or things, you know. It's good to spend time on those things and think about them, but also, you know, if that's the only thing you're doing, you know, all work, no play, you gotta find a balance. Anyway, you know, you gotta, I think what I'm realizing is that it's really important that in the coming months that I find a balance for myself. It's not 2 books a month, it's perhaps not 21 books a month, but maybe something in the middle of that. And interestingly enough, the pandemic is why I started this channel as well, because I was reading so much. And it's interesting how that's changed so quickly for me. And I don't necessarily mean that in a bad way, because, you know, life is in flux. Then I recently got a job, and then I got an internship, so I've been essentially working 2 jobs, plus I'm podcasting more, and Brad and I were planning a really exciting day. So like, I'm busy, but I have to have time for self-care. So what this pandemic is telling me about my reading habits is that I need to do some work, to work on myself, to work on finding healthy balances in my life that both allow me to enjoy stories and enjoy puzzles. I've recently started picking those back up, and but to enjoy stories and to enjoy puzzles and to bring me a lot of happiness and joy and are part of my self-care routine, but not sway those so hard that I'm doing them in an unhealthy manner where I'm rejecting my own emotions. I will say, interestingly, a genre that I've picked up during this time that I haven't really otherwise spent a lot of time reading is adult romance. As you know, as a teen, you kind of read across the board, or I found that I read across the board of like genres within the YA kind of umbrella, but adult romance is not something I had read much of, and I've done that this year, and oh my god, I love it. I love it. I also really love an illustrated cover. Covers with real people on them don't do it for me, but like illustrated covers, ooh, I love that. But yeah, so it's been interesting to see how kind of my genre habits have changed. I've realized that some of the YA stuff is a little too young for me at this point. I'm not really empathizing as much with the coming of age story and need something that's either much darker, like a dark fantasy, or that's much lighter, like a fluffy romance, because they always pretty much end up well. And I kind of needed that, you know, sense of control and ownership here. And so it's been interesting to look back at the 70 books that I've read since like March 11 and analyze and do some reflection on the ways that I've been reading and what I've been reading and why. And I hope that you know, you've also read some great books. I will say that my like 2 favorite books during this time have been Bonds of Brass by Emily Skrutsky. I can't stop thinking about it. I read it in early May. It's so fast-paced. It's science fiction fantasy, first in a trilogy. Amazing. I love it. And then the second book that I love so much is Beach Read by Emily Henry, which is a romance where 2 authors who are both in writer's block have beach houses right next to each other on Lake Michigan. It's a Midwestern story. I love it. Beach houses on Lake Michigan, and then they challenge each other to swap genres and write a book in the other person's genre, and they're both great. And I've read a lot of awesome books during this time. Those have been 2 that I've stuck with and like that have stood out to me, that I would pick up again in a heartbeat, because they brought me such joy and such fun times to read. So I want to know, if you've made it this far in the video, whether during this time you've read a ton more or a ton less. And I want to hear a little bit more about your reading journey in 2020 in the comments, if you care to share, if you have a story. Also, if you want to recommend me a great comfort read or a read that has brought you a lot of joy during this time, I would absolutely love to hear it. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!